Muy buenos días a todos.
¿Cómo está, querido hermano Puente?
Muy buenos días, querido hermano, gusto saludarlo.
Igualmente. De Valdivia.
Sí, aquí lo veo. Un gran saludo al norte, a todos los queridos hermanos.
Igualmente. Igualmente. Vamos a silenciarnos ahora.
Muy buenos días, queridos hermanos. Adolfo Nadia, acá en la región metropolitana.
¿Cómo está, querido hermano Adolfo? Saludarte.
Buenos días, Guillermo Tapia acá de los Andes. A todos, un saludo cariñoso.
Igualmente, mi querido hermano.
Muy buenos días.
Hoy día es la
Querido hermano
semana
Guillermo.
de la
Hola, querido hermano Armando.
Buenos días, queridos hermanos de todo el país. Un gusto verlos a todos también. Yo soy el doctor.
Hola, querido hermano Blanco, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Buenos días, queridos hermanos, desde Hamburgo, Alemania, Adiel Enríquez, de la logia Absalón.
Querido hermano Adiel, encantado de saludarlo. Cuando me atendió allá en Hamburgo hace varios años atrás, que fue así.
Buenos días, queridos hermanos. Mucho gusto estar con ustedes en este día tan importante.
Buenos días, gran maestro.
Muy buenos días, gran maestra.
Buenos días,
Un gusto
buenos
compartir
días.
con
Gran
usted.
maestra.
Hola, buen día. Les saluda Marco Vidal. Gusto verla.
Igualmente,
Querido hermano
querido hermano.
Marco,
Hola, buen día.
un abrazo desde Valdivia. A todos también.
¿Cómo está Valdivia? ¿Llueve o no llueve?
No, no, estamos bien, estamos bien. Todavía estamos en primavera.
Qué bueno.
¿Cómo
Hola,
estás,
Armando,
Heriberto?
buen
Qué
día.
gusto verte.
Un abrazo, mi querido hermano Marco. Gusto verte.
Igual, igual.
Un placer.
Gracias.
Hola, querido Omar, buenos días. Le habla Juan
Eduardo,
Eduardo
hola.
Rutia.
Hola, hola.
Hola.
¿Cómo le
¿Qué
va?
tal?
Hola.
Juan Eduardo.
Marco.
¿Cómo está? Buenos días,
Hermano
querido hermano
Juan.
Waldo.
Hola, Eduardo.
Muy buenos
Mi
días.
hermano Glauco.
Hola, hermanito, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien, pues ¿cómo está Osorno?
Bien, pues con calorcito también, igual que Valdivia.
Eso,
Si somos hermanos.
eso. Tócala.
Adiel, buenos días. Adiel, buenos días. Te saluda Marco Vidal. ¿Cómo estás?
Venerable, aquí estamos muy bien, muchas gracias. Con el invierno más o menos 0 grados y con una pandemia terrible aquí en Alemania, ¿no?
Uy, uy,
Estás
uy.
en Hamburgo, ¿no?
Sí, en Hamburgo, en
Ah.
el norte.
Qué gusto de saludarte. Tenemos que conversar mañana o pasado.
Sí, cómo no, a vuestra disposición, venerable. Gracias.
Buenos días, gran maestro José Garchitorena.
Buenos
Muy
días,
buenos días,
Marco.
gran
Buenos
maestro.
días a todos. Un gusto
Buenos días.
acompañarlos. Gracias por
Hola,
la
querido
Buenos
invitación.
días,
hermano
gran
José. ¿Cómo
maestro.
estás?
Muy buenos días.
Buenos días. José, ayer fueron los funerales del querido hermano Vázquez.
Sí,
¿O solo hoy día?
efectivamente. Él falleció en la madrugada y lo enterraron creo que 2:30 de la tarde, 3 de la tarde. No,
Ya.
no hubo velatorio por la emergencia sanitaria para evitar pero bueno, fue la gente salió a la calle a medida que el
Sí.
cortejo iba atravesando la ciudad y bueno, y a las 9 de la noche hubo un aplauso generalizado desde los balcones y de las puertas de las casas. Fue una cosa bastante emotiva, como para despedirlo. Por
Dejó
esperada, no, fue una noticia bastante removedora, ¿no? Él ya estaba enfermo, se sabía que era un desenlace inminente, pero bueno.
Claro. Ustedes como Gran Logia no tuvieron participación en los honores, ¿no? De despedida.
No, es que el entierro fue familiar,
Ya.
fue íntimo, ¿no?
Fue.
Nosotros participamos en la prensa. Esta mañana alguna radio me hizo algún reportaje, una entrevista a propósito del tema,
Claro.
pero no más que eso. No hubo homenajes públicos, digamos.
Ya. Muchas gracias.
¿Cómo está, querido hermano Jaime Alcaíno de Chiloé Insular?
Buenos días, queridos
Benito.
hermanos. Gusto saludarlos.
Hola, querido hermano Mario. ¿Cómo
Buenos
te
días,
va?
querido hermano
¿Cómo está la
Mario.
Serena? Oye,
Aquí
Valle.
estamos lo más bien. hasta el
¿Está en Ovalle?
momento, con muchos, con aumento
¿De los casos?
de contagiados con el COVID muy grande.
Oh,
Así que de repente nos van a guardar de nuevo.
pucha, cae. Tú estás en Ovalle, ¿cierto?
En Ovalle, sí.
Ya.
Aquí en Ovalle donde hay mucho. Tenemos más contagiados que en ninguna parte de la región.
Oh,
Así que estamos medio complicados.
Ahí en Ovalle, querido hermano, ¿se reactivó los trabajos agrícolas y todo eso?
Esperen un poquito, esperen un segundito que déjame hacer algo que tengo que hacer. Esperen un poquito. Voy a subirle el audio, que lo tengo bajo. Ahí sí. Ahora sí, mi querido hermano. ¿Quién me preguntaba, por favor?
No, le preguntaba si es que en Ovalle se reactivaron los trabajos, ¿en qué fase están?
No, nosotros seguimos vía telemática. Estamos en esto. Podríamos haber hecho, o sea, eventualmente podríamos haber desarrollado algunas actividades, pero aquí en Ovalle, la logia de Ovalle no ha hecho nada presencial, digamos. Seguimos en forma telemática.
Ya, pero
Hemos tenido,
en general, en la comuna.
nosotros estamos en la fase 4,
Ah, ya.
¿ya? Entonces, ha habido algunas actividades, una logia de La Serena que hizo algunas actividades de afiliaciones, eso lo hizo. La logia de Vicuña hizo un aumento de salario el fin de semana pasado. Es decir, hay algunas cosas que se han estado haciendo,
Ya.
algunas logias, ¿ya? El resto seguimos todos telemáticos.
Ya.
¿Cómo está, querido hermano? Hermano Vidal. Nuestro querido hermano Guillermo Tapia. ¿Cómo está?
Hermano Mario, gusto saludarte.
Igualmente. Oye, ¿se solucionó el problema del hermano o no? Con la mamá, esa cosa. ¿En qué
Sí,
quedó eso?
efectivamente, un hermano de Coquimbo, al final logramos hablar con un hermano que es anestesista.
Ah, ya.
Él hizo una gestión y la verdad que resultó excelente porque la familiar que sabemos se encuentra muy recuperada gracias a él.
Ya.
Así que estamos muy agradecidos y muy contentos.
Un hermano anestesista, no lo tengo en mi registro. ¿Quién puede ser?
A ver, mira. Mi hermano, espérate por aquí.
No, ya está.
Déjame ver acá.
No tengo en mi registro un hermano anestesista.
Hola, querido hermano Glauco.
¿Perdón?
Hola, Glauco, querido hermano. Hola, hola.
Hola, Jaimito, te saludé antes, pero estaba sin audio, parece. Hola.
Sin audio. ¿Todo bien?
Todo bien, todo marchando. Gracias, Jaimito.
Bueno, gracias. Gracias.
Me alegro que el problema se haya resuelto.
Se trata de Julio Perey, de Aptao.
De Aptao. No lo tenía en mi registro. No sé, no lo ubico.
Quizás sea de mi hermano nuevo, no sé.
Probablemente, porque no lo tengo. Sé de algunos otros hermanos, pero
para el idioma original del speaker, del presentador. En segunda instancia, existe la posibilidad de poder interactuar con nuestros expositores a través de preguntas que ustedes pueden ir haciendo. Estas las deben dirigir al chat del Zoom, al nombre de moderador, que es mi nombre, Rodrigo Andrade, por favor. Es sumamente importante poder contar con la interacción de ustedes y con su participación y las ideas que nos puedan expresar. Vamos a partir esta jornada, esta Semana del Clima, que nos vendrá acompañando todos los días de la semana a partir de las 10 de la mañana hasta el día sábado. Por lo tanto, queremos que nos puedan acompañar y no perdernos de vista de las interesantes conversaciones. A continuación, tengo el placer de dejar con ustedes al señor Sebastián Jans Pérez, gran maestro de la Agrologia de Chile, columnista en diversas revistas y publicaciones chilenas, autores de libros de historia chilena y ha incursionado en la narrativa. Por favor, gran maestro, acompáñenos, por favor.
Mr. Juan Carlos Llobet Eluchan, Ministry of Energy of Chile. Dear brother Jose Garcia Ferreira, President of the Sixth Center of the Inter-American Masonry Confederation. Dear brother Carlos Patricios, Great Commander of the Supreme Council of the 33rd Grade. Dear Sister Adriana Condon, Grand Mistress of the Great Family Lodge of Chile. Dr. Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the International Agency of Energy, and Brother Rodrigo Andrade Ramirez, Director of the Sustainability and Climate Change Commission of Grand Lodge of Chile. Masonry authorities, dear attendants, dear sisters and brothers, participants following through social media from all over the world. For the Grand Lodge of Chile, this is a special moment of history. The performance of this Climate Week is one of the milestones of the action the Chilean society, working society to favor the human being is part of the reason of existence of the Grand Lodge. It does it through its members and through certain ethical principles from its institutional character. It doesn't intervene in our action, our commitment through political actions and debate in every democratic society. It doesn't want to mandate ni have certain truth. The Grand Lodge follows the action from the ethical construction necessary to orient the behavior of people and communities, building rationality to be compatible with the higher interests of human beings and with the rights that each integrant of society is entitled to. We're common being, and the matter of not doing to the others what we don't like them to do with me allows to contextualize all the purpose of those who intervene in the human activities and the space humankind exists, in local, partial, or total sense. In the human development from the first building of the first construction of civilization, the human realization has depended on the environment it is located to perform the dreams, aspirations, and ambitions. Nature has put at disposition products and resources for making that possible. More glorious and more extraordinary of the human being is being possible through the transformation of the environment and the usage of natural resources. At the same time, the most absurd and the most perverse. Defining what is good and what is bad in the human action is part of the moral exercise. As long as we can discriminate morally and establish rationality which build decisions, society establishes the prelude for political decisions that have to address, in particular, whether that is within democratic practices. A good policy, no matter how well it is formulated from the technical aspects, if it is morally objected, for sure it will be doomed to failure. We have proven in recent decades that democracies, the moral debate is determinant for to resolve things that will favor or will affect societies and their components. Ethical institutions such as Masonry aims to reform the individual behavior of their members around the common being and the rationality built in order to establish conventional moral conditions to put in action that is considered the best for communities and people. With the experiences that have been contributed by the studies of sciences within the last 50 years, sensitization of moral aspect related to the usage of natural resources, it's been building an increasing moral vision regarding that we are in a crisis that becomes as a consequence of greenhouse emissions. Science has put evidence damage that have put exploitation of resources, the lack of renewal of those resources, pollution, and the different ways of contamination that are causing climate change. That concern has been in the institutional reality of the Grand Lodge of Chile through many of our brothers and lodges that for a few decades have been insisted in an environmental crisis which is expressed in our national geography and all over the world. This has been taken as a priority for the current institutional administration. Last year, we set up an advisory sustainability and climate change commission comprised by very well-renowned professional masons with environmental specialization. With them, we program more than 150 conferences in different cities around climate change. Different initiatives have been developed in order to open the debate of the urgent emergency of the and the action of the masonry correspondent to the Paris Agreement of 2015. So far this year, different debates, important specialized debates have been developed around the different aspect of the environmental detriment of Chile, and an increasing awareness has been created in Mason community based on sustainability as a driver principle. In 2020, members of our lodge participated in a remote training with the Angor Nobel Prize organized by the International Foundation He Precise activity. We expect to join new participants by 2021. We have also started the measurement of the carbon footprint in our branches, this from the masonry houses. That will allow us to develop a set of proposals to administrators once the masonry activities come back to the temples. Within the next few hours, the consolidated report of carbon footprint measurement of Masonic houses will be delivered to all masonry authorities, national, regional, and local authorities, and to the international masonry community as a first referential document about our impact in the global warming and climate change. But without questions, one of the most important steps that during this year, 2020, full of constraints of all kinds, we built a 500,000 brothers nationally have joined us in the current progress and the current projects, and the most important that was upcoming. That has set the foundations for the Flex Climate Week we are inaugurating this week. For all Masons, the climate actions is one of the big tasks of our times and parallel responsibility. We think it is very important in that context the presence of the Ministry of Energy in this meeting, since Chile has been setting a remarkable path in what means removing from the electric grid the production with fossil fuels. We think this task, coherent with the Paris Agreement that will term 5 years, cannot have ideologized readings or hegemonic purposes for the elaboration of common actions. We have to make from the civil action the political action. Then we want to greet your presence, Mr. Minister, because you express an open, inclusive, and coherent behavior with the challenges that have to involve all the players, all the actors that may help to a great change of the behaviors the climate action requires to adapt socially and civilizationally to a new world that will arise from the great virtues and the great mistakes of the human behavior. I want to welcome all those who are going to participate in this reflection, training, and debate week about climate change, those who are attending from abroad, and those who are joining from the different points of the country and the world. We hope all of you the best day, and we all go away strengthened about our convictions about what we have to do as people and as human communities. Thank you very much for your attendance in your different qualities.
Muchísimas gracias, gran maestro, por esas palabras, muy
Thank you very
inspirador.
much, Grandmaster, for those words, very inspiring words. Actually, we are lucky to have the commitment of the Grand Lodge of Chile for this purpose. Very quickly, we are going to listen to the words by the Ministry of Energy, Juan Carlos Duvet, business engineer and Chilean politician. Previously, he performed as Work and Social Prevention Ministry in the first government of Sebastián Piñera. Thank you for joining us today, and the microphone is yours, Mr. Minister.
Ahí sí, estábamos con un problema con el audio. Bueno, muy
Yeah, we
buenos
had a problem with the audio. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Grand Master, for that kind introduction. I want to congratulate the Grand Lodge of Chile for organizing this event. The discussion we have today and during the whole week about climate, I think it addressed the most important challenge our generation has. I am convinced climate change is the most important challenge of our generation, and it's the most patent and deepest way we have to show our concerns to future generations. And I think it's very important to address the climate challenge from an ethical perspective, which is an essential point of view of this problem, of this challenge that many times is put aside. I think putting on the table the ethical perspective is key. First, in order to introduce a more human vision to this challenge, and second, for us to redouble the sense of emergency we have to address the climate change with. I am convinced the pandemic we are living today has put many things, have revealed many things, and have us being aware of many of our fragilities and our weaknesses, human weaknesses, I mean. But I think these three things have been revealed by this pandemic that I think are very attention to today's discussion. First, it revealed the size of the challenge, the magnitude of the challenges we have in terms of climate change. Just to put an example, a few weeks, some weeks ago, in April, May, when the first wave of the pandemic was hitting in the most severe way to the world, and most countries have their populations living very strict low incomes, greenhouse emissions, gases emissions just drop slightly higher than 10%. In a world practically frozen, emissions dropped around one third, even less than one third. We should reduce them in order to be capable to fulfill the Paris Agreement goals. That reveals the deepness of the depth of the transformation we have to introduce in our lifestyles in order to achieve being carbon neutral and stopping global warming. The second thing the pandemic revealed that we are together in this, that this fantasy that sometimes invites or encourages individualism for each person to concern about their own interests is just a dream, and we are all intimately or closely connected. Those who are living in Chile are closely connected to those who are living in China. What somebody does or stop doing in an animal market in China impacts the way we live in the other side of the world. It also reveals what we do or what we stop doing. If we don't put a mask in the metro, it may affect the life of an elder person that perhaps is going to get his pension funds. Everything we do or we stop doing will have an impact with others. That's very important for the climate discussion because this is a global problem. We are all connected. Emissions that generate climate change do not respect borders. it doesn't matter when ton of that carbon dioxide was emitted in China, Africa, Chile, China. It has the same impact on the quality of life of every inhabitant in the world. Being aware that we are connected to each other is also essential to address in a better way the climate change challenge. But the last thing the pandemic revealed, in my opinion, which is relevant, is the huge capacity human beings have to adapt, of changing the ways we're doing things. The way we are having this conversation today, the way we've been working, that children have been studying, it reveals that human beings could change the way we do things, and we have a great capacity of inventing things, and that's very important to address the climate change challenge. Chile has a very concrete calendar to address the climate change. Although we generate less than 0.3% of global emissions of greenhouse effect gases, we've committed as a country, as a small country and a developing country, we have committed to be carbon neutral by 2050. We don't have time today to review all the details of that plan, but this is a plan that has had a cross-wide agreement. All political parties, all political organizations, NGOs, companies, the scholars have been part of this plan. I think that's essential because this is a long-term challenge. We need the support by everyone. Our plan essentially is very simple. What we're going to do is that we are going to clean our electric generation or power generation grid that today depends about 40% of fossil fuels, to close all coal plants and leverage our huge renewable energy potential. PV energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, to use that green electricity, which is also cheaper, in order to replace fossil fuels in other sectors of our economy. That we're going to introduce electricity in transportation with electromobility. We're going to introduce electricity to our homes, replacing, for instance, wood in the central south area of the country, reducing pollution. We are going to replace with electricity using oil in our industries. That way we are going to reduce our carbon footprint and being carbon neutral by 2050. Just to wrap up, I want to announce 4 ethical pillars I think are in the core of the climate change challenge, and I hope you in the following session could address more deeply. First, the intergenerational justice challenge. We are the first generation that are capable of feeling the consequences of global warming. But we are the last generation which is on time to do things to be capable of stopping global warming. And this huge challenge of intergenerational justice is an ethical problem which is in the core of the climate change challenge. Decisions we as generation make or stop making will pay consequences our future generations, our children and grandchildren. And that's an ethical dilemma that has to be in the core of the administrations. We cannot address what is easiest and more convenient for us. We have to take in consideration the impact our decisions will have for future generations. The second ethical dilemma of the climate change is among countries. Climate change is generated by the accumulation of greenhouse effect gases in the atmosphere. Then consequences we are seeing of global warming are, at a great extent, consequences of emissions of many countries that have already developed in the past, that they increase the quality of life and the standard of life of their population. Emissions we are seeing today are increasing, generated in developing countries, in particular in Asia and Africa. Besides, they have higher birth rates compared to the other countries of the world, developed countries. Then the ethical dilemma is that all countries that have already developed and those who generated the most portion of the emissions that generate the problems, how those countries are going to help developing countries, and they still have the challenge of improving quality of life of their population, taking them out of poverty. International cooperation will be essential there, and those who are responsible at a great extent of the problem to give a hand the countries who are entitled to develop themselves to improve the quality of life of their population. The third is a challenge among the group of different countries. In Chile, for instance, the more vulnerable sectors in our middle class are the ones who are suffering the consequence of global warming. Fires, unfortunately, in general, affect more vulnerable people. We've seen in the Valparaiso Hills. Drugness, those who are in more fragile position to address the consequences are mid and small agriculture people. not big agricultural people, and so on. The consequences of climate change would affect the most vulnerable, who are in leadership positions, of those who can make decisions in the public and private sectors, who have to be capable of taking in mind the interests of those most fragile sectors to make the right decisions and reducing the impact of global warming. And lastly, and I'm going to wrap up with this, I think it is very important in the global warming discussion, we do not use the economy where we should use the ethics, and not using the ethics where we should use the economics. What do I mean with this? The decision of being carbon neutral by 2050, which the Paris Agreement said we have to do in order to stop global warming, that's an ethical decision. That's a decision of we have to do the right thing, which is being carbon neutral by 2050. This is a decision where utilitarianism, which is in the core of the neoclassical economy, the capability of balancing costs and benefits, each of the decisions we make, that's just doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it is impossible. It is impossible to calculate which are the costs global warming will have if we are not capable of stopping on time. How much cost a community or a culture disappears in a Pacific island because it was flooded? We don't know, because it is impossible to calculate well the cost of global warming. It is impossible to have the economic balance to make a decision to be carbon neutral. Regarding being or not being carbon neutral is an ethical decision, and we just have to do the right thing. And that's why Chile has been committed to be carbon neutral. Once we made the decision, the question is how to reach the goal. And then we have to use our economies, our best engineer to be capable to develop a plan. And that's what we've been doing. That balances the different measures, design public policies which are most efficient in order to be capable of fulfilling that goal. This is a challenge with huge tensions of intergenerational justice among countries, among segments of populations. We need to do the right thing, and we need to have a plan as we have developed, which is anchored in a good public policy to be capable of reaching that goal. I want to congratulate once again to the Grand Lodge for this event. Hope you have a very good discussion day and in the following days too. Thank you very much.
Gracias, señor ministro.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, for that approach, ethical approach to the problem of climate change. It is one of the challenges we have outstanding, and we also want to raise. Next, I want to introduce Mr. José Garchitorena Ferreira, Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry of Uruguay, President of the Sixth Zone of the Inter-American Confederation, author of several books, PhD in law, and collaborator of different journalistic publications. Mr. Garchitorena, please. Go ahead. Thank you. Good morning.
Sebastián Jans Pérez, Gran Maestro de la Gran Logia de Chile, señor Ministro.
Brother, Grand Master of the Lodge of Chile, Mr. Ministry of Energy, Juan Carlos Sobes, Grand Mistress of the Female Lodge of Chile, Adriana Ignat, authorities, ladies and gentlemen, in my quality of President of the Zone of the Masonry Inter-American Confederation, CMI, it is an honor to participate in the opening act of the Climate Week, organized by the Grand Lodge of Chile in the frame of the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement about climate change.
Que ratifica el compromiso.
International event that ratifies saying the commitment of Chilean Masonry, addressing the matters this time without any sort of prejudice from the humanist doctrine that characterizes Masonry, and with the clear purpose, as we have seen, of driving debates and the case of equality, fraternity. Since its foundation about 160 years ago, the Grand Lodge of Chile has been able to honor the commitment that characterizes Masons in Chile and in all areas. So the contribution to the construction of the Republic, the expansion of education, conservation of social rights, and generally to conforming a society that's more free and more just. And as the other lodges have said, appealing to liberty, to justice and consideration in public matters as a way to guarantee everyone's rights. With this spirit, I am sure that we are addressing the challenge of organizing these events in time where the worry of our societies are centered in the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected everyone's lives everywhere. But I've done it as a response with every progressive institution. We know that mankind will have a future provided that human beings have a sight to the future, transcending the circumstances and the emergencies of every time and place. Human community is facing today the consequences of climate change that won't stop due to the threat of a very, very dangerous virus. So it's important to generate conscience and adopt actions. That's why the Grand Lodge of Chile, and along with several well acknowledged and well renowned scientists in different countries, have looked at different angles where we can look at how to fix this. And that's why we have contacted the other Masonic lodges to join the analysis, reflection, and of course, action. This call is the one we are responding to with our presence and our will to promote in our respective communities the conducts that can contribute to a better relationship between people and the environment. I'm sure that during this climate change week, we will have new views and contributions that will help this. So in the name of the great Masons of America and then Latin Europe, the institution founded hundreds of years ago with the great cooperation of the Grand Lodges of the world, I hope that success will follow this grand event organized by the Grand Lodge of Chile. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Jose García for this message. That first of all, it's our first international guest in this week, Climate Week 2020, and it puts perspective the long-term effort of international character that Masonry wants to conduct. So we thank you for your message. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Mrs. Adriana Nina Condor, Grand Mistress of the Female Grand Lodge of Chile, nurse of the University of Chile, entrepreneur, and chosen Grand Mistress in the 2019 in the midst of the social riots. And she has directed the institution in these times of pandemics, which has meant working differently with a level of adaptation that's greater in these times. So I want to introduce Mrs. Adriana Marinat.
Muy buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Chile, dear brother Sebastian Jans, Minister of Energy, Mr. Juan Carlos Vivet, Dr. Khatib Miro, dear brother Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Uruguay, Jose García Mason authorities, dear brothers and sisters. I want to thank you for the opportunity of participating in this meeting about the challenges. We are waiting to get a connection again with Mrs. Jana Ninat. We are on the Climate Week 2020. It's an international effort being conducted by the Grand Lodge of Chile to commemorate the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. And we will have an intense week with many activities. So we are in contact once again with Ms. Serena. So, good morning. Can you hear me?
¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me?
Se escucha bien.
Good morning. And I'm thanking the opportunity of participating in this meeting about the ethical challenges demanded by the climate crisis. The country and the planet is facing. Masonry allows us to and also calls us to don't not leave any matter behind. The greatest consciousness that we can achieve through the study, reflection, and discussion between brothers and sisters with different points of view can be translated into concrete actions in society. Without a doubt, the meetings this week will allow us to move forward in this sense, and I want to congratulate you for the initiative. One of the main motivations of societies, particularly after the Industrial Revolution, have been the economic growth, which has led us to ignore understanding that humanity's life depends on nature and not over nature or over nature. In the same way, we have been since then in a framework that made us believe that we could have infinite growth in a finite planet, which has had a terrible outcome as we're not moving forward in the identification of the moments where it is ecological and ethically necessary to harmonize said growth with the care of our own home or only home, Earth. The planet has been mistreated increasingly with intensive plantations and indiscriminate exploitation of natural resources, both of the sea and the land, breaking a balance with the devastating consequences of which we are just gaining consciousness, and that happens within the so-called era of anthropocentrism, which has been inaugurated since the 50s, and the main characteristics include the speed of the imbalance that we are seeing due to human activity. We have altered harmony, and we're not talking about just an esoteric matter. We're talking about the balance that makes possible for nature and the existence itself of forests, animals, in a chain that transforms over and over again without losing anything. And it makes life on Earth possible. And if we don't do something about it, and if we don't measure the consequences, we and worse, our children and the children of our children will suffer. Orangutans in Borneo and Sumatra have become an icon. Hundreds of them are murdered every year. Their natural home is being burned without truce to obtain palm oil that's being used in shampoo, in candy, in frozen pizza, in cosmetics, in detergents, and many other products that we consume on a daily basis. America, the Amazons with their 600,000 million tree acts as a great natural factory for evaporation fed with solar energy. It's equivalent to the production of 50,000 centrals and is the largest in the continent. These trees, these giant trees, pump water from underground with their roots, and every one of them launches up to 1,000 liters of steam water to the atmosphere every day, mobilizing life around the planet. It's a service absolutely free from the Amazonic forest and possibly absolutely necessary for life in the planet as we know it today, life that we humans are destroying. It is worth mentioning that only in 2019 in the Amazon, we registered over 80,000 fires and we lost about 10,000 square meters of tropical forest, the highest index in history according to the National Institute of Research in Brazil. Current times and with the energy production levels of the industry, life in cities, the transportation, and the food system that we have developed is altering this balance. Just to address a few data, the production of CO2 has increased 40% since the Industrial Revolution, and this is the main gas of the so-called greenhouse effect. Global warming has modified climate faster than we had foreseen, and according to the UN, the current temperature is a higher degree than a century ago, and in the Arctic about 5 degrees higher. So it's crucial to avoid increasing 2 degrees on the historic level, as was agreed on COP 2015 in the so-called Paris Agreement. If we do not take real measures now, average temperature worldwide will increase between 3 and 5 degrees Celsius until 2100, and it will make human life as we know it today, absolutely possible. And we will have to withstand larger and larger heat waves, desertification, droughts, and floods. The Paris Agreement that we are living today is a historic, transcendental milestone, and the action of the states, especially the most contaminant states, is crucial. In the case of Chile, within the framework of this agreement, we are working to reduce 30% of CO2 emissions. And within this framework, the energetic policy for 2050 has committed to decarbonize and incentivize renewable, non-conventional renewable energies. Another commitment that Chile assumed is the sustainable management and recovery of 100 hectares of native forest, with another 100,000 hectares of reforestation with endemic species from now on to 2030, which is a great effort and evidently insufficient. If we consider that 122,000 hectares were affected by forest fires, wildfires, and 27% more than the previous season. It is worth mentioning as well that a person needs 22 trees daily in order to breathe, and the capture of CO2 conducted by the native forests is much larger than the monocultives such as pine tree, as well as allowing a larger biodiversity on the ground level. Finally, if we consider that 136 of the 346 communes in the country, districts in the country have today a water scarcity decree, that means it's urgent. It's urgent to solve this, and it's related to establishing water as a human right, as relevant as the right of life. To people, people have also a responsibility as citizens, as consumers, particularly particularly all Masons aspiring to live in harmony with ourselves, with others, and with the universe. This responsibility becomes an ethical, inescapable ethical. Right, and in the middle of the pandemic that we're living today, the World Health Organization estimates the minimum is 100 liters of water daily for basic human needs per person. And the gas is just Petroca. People are getting water in trucks between 20 and liters on a daily basis. In this context, a good idea would be to identify our carbon footprint, which is an indicator of how a person, a product, or a company impacts the planet. And here we see the possibilities for preferring public transportation, bicycles, or walking instead of using a car, buying local products instead of imported products that have traveled thousands of kilometers. purchase without packaging, save water, compost organic uh, trash, and practice the circular economy, reduce consumption, reuse, and recycle. The pandemic that has affected us so much in the sanitary, economical, and even psychological aspects has given us a lesson of humility and has allowed us to leave this Plato cave. And it's an opportunity to refocus on what truly important and try to give an answer to the essential questions that we ask ourselves as people gifted with the reason and the heart. Where are we? Where do we come from? What are we? And where are we going? In our lives, in Masonic lives, the elements of nature are present in a significant manner. In our initiation, in the celebration of solstice, giving a message of care and respect for our environment. And here is where we have principles for liberty, fraternity, tolerance, equality, and respect. And from the Mason edict, of course, our actions are very important, both on our Masonic work and our profane life, because we cannot forget that the larger consequence of this unbalance that we have mentioned is suffered by women, as we have a very important role in the childbearing and in the care of the most vulnerable. In this context, taking action is not really an option. It's an ethical mandatory aspect that we will conduct via education and the daily decisions that we make. Have reached the level of cultural development and technological development where we have the duty and the moral responsibility of relating to nature differently and revert at least partially the unbalance that we have broken. The serious situations that we are facing and the possibility of the end of mankind that we know it today if we continue without taking action. Thank you.
Gran maestra de la Gran Logia Femenina de Chile.
Thank you, Grandmaster of the Female Lodge of Chile, Adriana Ignat, for your words. In fact, your call is call to action, and our call is call to the climate emergency. There is no time to waste. Science has clearly spoken. The Scientific Panel of the United Nations has indicated that in the 2020 decade, 2020 to 2030, we still have an opportunity window. We have the moral duty and the ethical duty to take advantage of. Our call as Sustainability and Climate Change Commission of the Grand Lot of Chile is related to this ethical component. That means we perfectly understand what we are talking about. The planet is an overdiagnosed ill being. We know the bad things that are happening to us. We have the technology, we have the knowledge, even the resources, but we cannot account for the changes we have to do. Then we have decided to put hands on, ally with our colleagues, with our Mason brothers around the world in such a way of making joint actions in the long term. And this is the starting point. Our Climate Week 2020 is the kicking off point for this action, call to action, for this ethical approach to the problem of climate change. But without time to waste, we don't need to think over and over again to a problem science have already clear. Then we want to thank those who are joining us today, but in particular, we want to thank those who will join us in the future to account for climate action that we have to undertake. Next, I want to leave the floor to Dr. Fatih Birol. Executive Director of the International Agency of Energy, founder and president of the Business Council of Energy of the International Energy Agency, one of the most active industrial advisory centers in this topic. Appointed by Forbes magazine amongst the most influenced people in the world in the energy scene, recognized by Financial Times in 2007 as Energy Personality of the Year. He leads the Davos World Economic Forum and the Energy Advisory Board, and member of the United Nations as Advisory Board on Sustainable Energy for All. Has been awarded several awards, such as the Rising Sun Order by the Japanese Emperor, the Polar Star from the King of Sweden, and the highest awards from Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. He will present a lecture called 5 Years from the Paris Agreement, Renewing the Challenges and Opportunities to Face the Climate Action. Without further words, I leave the microphone to Dr. Fatih Birol.
Grandmaster Jans, Minister Jobe, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to all of you from Paris. Paris, the city that lent its name to the Global Climate Agreement in 2015. It's a great, real pleasure to join you to this event organized by the Grand Lodge of Chile. I am thankful to you that you have devoted this week on different aspects of climate change. In the next few minutes, I will talk to you about energy and climate change. Dear colleagues, energy is responsible more than 2/3 of the emissions causing climate change. So energy has a big responsibility for our climate change problem we are facing today. In other words, without solving the problem in the energy sector, we have no chance whatsoever to reach our climate goals. 5 years ago, these days, this week in Paris, all the countries around the world came together. And there was a historic agreement, which means the world is going to fix the climate problem. In my view, this agreement, I would say the historic agreement, is a result of the multilateralism, diplomacy, and dialogue between the nations around the world. At that time, 2015, the idea was reducing the emissions gradually, but now we are at a stage that from the gradual reduction of emissions, we are in a stage to transform profoundly our economies. But of course, in the meantime, this year, the world is experiencing a major shock, the shock of COVID. Economies around the world, health systems around the world, and also the energy sector is going through a major shock. I am an energy person, and I can tell you that since Second World War, global energy industry never experienced such a big shock. In order to tell you how big that shock is, I will give you two numbers. One, this year, global energy use, energy we use, energy demand, is declining about 5%, 5% decline. So what does it mean? Is it big or small? to give you put in a context, many of you would remember the 2008-2009 financial crisis. After that financial crisis, we have also seen global energy use decline as well. But this year's decline, 2020 decline, is 7 times deeper than the decline after the financial crisis. Just to show you how deep this decline is, how badly global energy sector is hit by COVID. I am sure with the rebound of the economy, having the COVID under control, global energy industry will once again stand on its feet, but I expect that the COVID will leave its scars on the energy sector for years, if not decades to come. Another number I want to share with you is on emissions. We all want to see emissions to decline, global emissions, because it is the reason why we are having climate change. This year, we see that the emissions, global emissions, are declining 7%. Normally, we should be all happy to see the emissions are declining. But if you ask me, I don't see this as a development, this 7% decline, as a reason to celebrate. Because this decline is happening for the wrong reasons. It is not happening because there is a new clean energy technology coming in the picture. It is not because governments are taking firmer decisions. This decline is happening because global economy is declining and human beings are suffering around the world because of COVID. I am afraid that if the governments do not take the necessary measures this year and the next in terms of their recovery packages, emissions will go back there where they were before the coronavirus crisis. There will be a rebound of the emissions. We will get back there where we were before the coronavirus crisis, and the 7% will be wiped out immediately. So therefore, it is critical that the governments need to make sure that their economic recovery packages, they are putting trillions and billions of dollars in order to give a life to economy. In those recovery packages, they should be putting clean energy policies, incentives for these recovery packages. Having said this, dear colleagues, if you ask me, even today, am I optimistic or pessimistic about the fight against climate change? I would vote for being on the optimistic side. Why I am optimistic? I have 2 reasons for being optimistic, even in these difficult times. The first one, more and more governments around the world are coming with the commitments, pledges to bring the emissions substantially down. Countries, one after another, putting commitments, pledges to bring their emissions to 0 by 2050. This government determination from Europe, from Japan, Korea, New Zealand, China, Canada, and of course other countries like Chile, an important leader, here, and maybe soon United States, this government determination, political determination is excellent, and this is the first reason why I am optimistic. Having said that, before going to the second reason why I'm optimistic, I want to make a footnote here. I congratulate those governments. I have already sent the government leaders my congratulations after their determination and their announcement of their targets. But I am a careful man. I will look at three things to be completely happy about the government determinations. First, it is good to have those targets, but I want to see what kind of energy policies, credible energy policies they are putting in place, legally binding, in order to bring those governments, those emissions to zero. For example, Japan. The other day, I talked with the Japanese minister. I was very happy to see that the Japanese emissions government sees to see 2050 zero. But I would like to see, for example, what Japan, how much offshore wind energy, solar energy, Japanese government will deploy in the next years, and what kind of financial incentives, mandates they are going to put in place in order to make this wind solar targets reachable so that emissions go down. So the first condition I have to be very happy is credible energy policies. Second, we are going to, as International Energy Agency, while we help those governments to put the credible energy policies, every year we are going to track, follow whether or not governments are doing what they are saying. Because to put the policies is something, to implement this is something else. This is the second thing, implementation of those policies. And third, why we are very happy to push to see the clean energy transitions, which are very important, we want to be sure those clean energy transitions are not happening at the cost of energy security and the increasing cost of energy to the consumers. This is very important to have the broader parts of population behind this clean energy transition and the government targets. So we will be closely monitoring and tracking what governments are doing in order to reach those targets they have announced, which in fact, even those announcements is a good news, and the first reason being optimistic. The second reason why I am optimistic is the clean energies today. Many of them, if not all, are becoming cheaper. Solar energy, for example, is growing very strongly. Last year, dear colleagues, about all the power plants built in the world, 50% of those power plants were solar. Other 50%, coal plus oil plus gas plus nuclear plus wind, everything 50%, solar 50%. And I can tell you that this is not necessarily driven by climate change. This is basically driven by because it is cheap. Today, solar is the cheapest source of electricity generation in most parts of the world. It is the reason why I have recently crowned, if I may say so, solar as the new king of global electricity markets. The new king of global electricity markets. It was coal before, and it is now the new king is the solar. And your country, Chile, has been definitely part of this success story through different measures that your government has taken. We also see that the many promising new technologies, clean energy technologies, are getting a strong momentum. And I would like to mention hydrogen here. All the countries around the world, they all love hydrogen. And some of them go beyond loving and putting strategies and investments. And I am very happy to see that Chile is one of those countries that come with a very clear strategy in terms of hydrogen. And I was honored to be with the president of Chile and my friend, Minister Jobe, when the new hydrogen strategy was announced. We also need other clean energy technologies. The biggest challenge we are facing today, dear colleagues, is that the emission reductions I mentioned to you between now and 2050, 50%, half of these emission reductions need to come from the technologies which are not in the market yet. They are in laboratories. They are in the test phases. We have to make sure that these technologies, new technologies, become the part of the market, like solar, like wind. We have a lot of things to do. My final point, we need to make sure, in my view, we need to make sure this clean energy transition is not happening at the cost of different nations and within the countries, some of the parts of the population. For example, the biggest problem we are facing today in the world is coal by far. And when you look at India, for example, gets a big chunk of its electricity from coal, and coal industry in India is the #1 source of employment. If you cut coal from one day to another, what are we going to do with the millions of people, miners, their families, power plant workers, and others with their livelihoods? How we have a just and inclusive transition. So therefore, these need to be, the energy transitions need to be very well designed from an energy side, economy side, and the social side. It will not happen by sending tweets, sending mottos, slogans. It has to be very well designed policies so that we build a grand coalition of the countries, of the different segments of the countries around the world. We have a very important date in front of us. I told you we are, these days, this week is the 5th year of Paris. The next important date is the November, when we have the climate summit, the COP26, going to take place this time in Glasgow, in the United Kingdom. I was just this morning talking with the UK minister. They have a historic opportunity and historic challenge there. If we can, once again, like we did in Paris, the world leaders, governments come together, thanks to the diplomacy, thanks to dialogue, and giving the momentum of the cheaper, clean energy sources, and bringing all developed and developing countries together. I told him we may well make Glasgow as beautiful as Paris, if not more beautiful. Because one of the beauties of Paris, in my view, as somebody living in this city since 25 years, not only because of Eiffel Tower, not only because of the cultural heritage of this country, not only because of the restaurants, bars, and river Seine, but also the Paris Agreement. I hope Glasgow will go in the history books as a successful city which brings a major success story in our fight against climate change. And as International Energy Agency, we are very keen to continue to lead global clean energy transitions with the technologies available today and those will be available tomorrow, and bringing all countries, developed and developing countries, together. So I wanted to once again thank the Chilean government for being one of the leaders in terms of pushing the clean energy transitions at home, but also internationally. And thank also to you, Grandmaster Jans, for inviting me to this very important meeting. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias al señor Fatih Birol por esas
Thank
palabras.
you very much, Mr. Fatimiro, for these beautiful words. And we share this optimistic view despite the great crisis we are facing. And we want to also use the few additional minutes, and Dr. Birol is going to be connected with us in order to give a few questions from the audience. I will start with two questions that we have already considered. First of all, Chile has the goal of reaching zero emissions for 2050. How do you see these in the global context? And additionally, I will ask a second question that's related. Many countries are betting on hydrogen. How do you evaluate the perspective of this technology? Mr. Birol, are you there?
Yes. Thank you very much for these questions. Now, Chile is one of the countries that came up early with the 2050 net zero goal. It's an excellent goal, first of all. But to reach that goal, we need to have credible energy policies. And when I follow Chile, and I follow Chile closely, I see that the government is taking the right steps in the right direction, ranging from solar to energy efficiency, from energy efficiency to hydrogen, a very promising technology. And here, The issue for me is the following for Chile and other countries. Through these steps, if they are implemented in the right way, if it doesn't, for example, lead to increase of the energy prices, if it doesn't cause any energy security challenges, it means that the Chile is modernizing its economy, its industry, and providing fresh air to its citizens, and a country that all Chileans can be proud of. And Chile is, in my view, with the very strong policies, clean energy policies. It's a very important country, Chile, but when you look at the global scale, Chile is definitely boxing over its weight. And I am very happy with that, because you are becoming a good source of inspiration to many countries around the world. When I talk with the other governments, I often use Chile as a good example. In terms of hydrogen, for example, you mentioned hydrogen. Hydrogen is today not a significant part of our energy mix, but momentum is great. Momentum is great, and in my view, hydrogen is today there where solar was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, solar was a romantic story because it was nice, but it was expensive. By building a lot of solar panels, learning by doing, the world brought the cost of solar down, and now everybody uses solar. And hydrogen, in a few years of time, not immediately, not today, maybe not even tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, hydrogen will be part of the energy mix. And those countries who are the front runners, like Chile, will not only make a good contribution to the fight against climate change, but they are going to prepare their industry, their economy very well for the future. Countries who are not part of this clean energy transitions may well end up with the obsolete technologies and industry systems. And I can well imagine that Chile will use hydrogen at home, but at the same time, Chile may well export hydrogen to many countries around the world or to its neighbors. Today, there are already agreements between Australia and Japan, and some other countries. Europe is thinking of this, just exporting hydrogen like you export LNG, gas, and other things. So Chile's determination is very good. Targets are very good, and the policies put in place are very good. They all need to be implemented in a timely manner. And as our colleagues, if we have colleagues from the government of Chile, they know very well. We are working very closely with our colleagues from Chile to assist them, to help them, and to support them to make it happen. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor Virol, por esas palabras. Como le
Thank
decía,
you, Mr. Birol, for your words. As I said previously, we share this optimism that you have shown through your words. First of all, because from the institutional point of view, and it has been shown by Mr. Yuven, and there's a commitment in countries and countries that have transitioned from carbon-based economies, and from the technological point of view, we have wider access to cleaner technologies, and obviously it's also a stimulus for countries that are in in development can continue with the decarbonation process of their economies. And maybe this is the most relevant thing for us. Organizations from the civil society, and in this case, international organizations from some social societies such as Missouri, have a larger commitment in function of accelerating these processes in such a way that we can face the climate crisis. So we bid Dr. Birol goodbye. He has some other previous commitments, and we will continue with this dialogue. And we have a question for Grand Mistress of the Female Grand Lodge of Chile, from the logic of I am so sorry, we seem to have lost signal with the speaker, and I couldn't hear the full question.
Ser humano, naturaleza, y cómo se puede recuperar el equilibrio.
And nature, and how could we recover the lost balance? Thank you very much, and we will continue with this dialogue. I want to remind the audience that on the Zoom channel, on the chat, with the moderator, we have the possibility of gathering more questions. Ms. Adriana, are you there? Yes, I am here, but I couldn't hear the question because we lost audio. Grand Mistress of the Female Lodge of Chile is preparing. We will remind the question from the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Uruguay and the Grand Lodge of Chile. So I think the question is, what is the vision of Masonry in the relationship with the human beings and nature, and how can we recover the lost balance? Can you hear me? We're waiting on the connection so we can answer these questions. It's Climate Week 2020 from the Grand Lodge of Chile. Grandmaster, maybe you could, while the Grandmaster prepares her answer, maybe you could say something.
Certamente la condición
Certainly, the human condition and the possibility of giving mankind all the possibilities for development in order to have freedom of consciousness in practical actions is an essential part of what Masonry looks for. Since its very origin, Masonry's origin is in the service of mankind, centered in the ability of mankind to find a way towards their own understanding in the context of the reality they live in. And in this general sense,
por supuesto la
of
necesidad
the need of a balance, this mean where the human condition is developed, which is nature, it's the environment. And we and our institutions have as a tradition precisely to the establishment of a reflection among them, a reflection of realities that we're living from the oldest traditions of mankind. This is present in a rather concrete manner, and there's a set of questions from the Chilean Masonry and in this crisis that we're facing. And so Masons that have been in several instances, even international instances, beginning with, I would say, the first affirmations of, for example, the water issue, the loss of this resource in many parts of the world, and that is being manifested in a rather concrete manner in the national reality decades ago. So there is a concern, an addressed concern, first of all, with the origin that has to do with why Masonry came to be and what it means, a fundamental aspect, which is the indications that we have with the great old traditions that have to do precisely with how is mankind related to this reality where we are developing our civilizations. But there's another fundamental aspect that has to do with the ability of Masonry of interpreting the historic time that we are living in, the historic time the Masons are living in. And that is a determining factor to understand today why Masonry is concerned with climate change. How do we compatibilize and reestablish this balance that comes from the origin itself of the human condition in terms of having to respond? Humankind has to respond to these conditions. Is there necessarily of the necessary stability regarding the environment they interact with on a daily basis? So without a doubt, the climate action is the great challenge not only for for Masons, but for humankind, for mankind in these times and for the coming decades. It's a great challenge because it means solving precisely the consequences of human actions that haven't really followed the sustainability and renewable abilities and recovery rhythm of the resources, natural resources we have. And that is the effort that we are conducting here. This is what we are trying to do in particular manner with this climate week and what we have been doing, and it's important to understand. And the great work, the great task is to generate consciousness, and from these behaviors that can contribute to facing the problems that we are facing in this kind of crisis. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Gran Maestro Sebastián Jans.
Thank you, Master Sebastian Jans, for this idea. The question is still open for the Grand Mistress of the Knowledge of Chile, Ms. Adriana Minet. The logic of gender equality and the impacts of climate change on women, which would be the role of female masonry. This question is still available if she has a connection. Additionally,
Señor José Garchitorena.
Mr. Jose Garchitorena, we got the next phone question. What is the potential for participation of masonry worldwide in function of the climate change challenges? Is Mr. Garchitorena there to answer to this question? Yes, I am here.
¿Me escuchan?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yo lo escucho, querido
I
hermano.
hear you, dear brother. Great. So answering to this question then, of course, I will own the worlds from the Masters with Jazz. I think he's been very clear in terms of the origin and the purpose of Masonry. And in terms of the concrete question being asked, I understand that the potential of Masonry is precisely in its diversity. Masonry gathers people from the diverse backgrounds and formations, and due to the profile, it has an ethical commitment and a certain action, and that means that putting this together with the formation from different areas, we see that Masonry can contribute from different point of view, different angles to this climate change matter. I would like to say that for a Mason, no human matter is foreign, and it's part, as the Grand Master said, it's part of the origin of Masonry to meet humans and tie them again and change the parameters and their ties to nature. And I think these piece together situations, profiles, everything makes possible for Renaissance to be able to fulfill, to contribute to this matter along with other people. Naturally, even though they're not really part of Masonry, they share these goals, and with this, I think can have a great task ahead of us.
Muchísimas gracias, señor
Thank you very much, Mr. Jose Matsutorena. We continue with Adriana, please. Can you hear me? Do you hear me, dear brother? Yes, Grand Mistress. Okay. Regarding the question asked on gender equality and work, it is precisely one of the goals of Masonry, and one of the main goals, I would say, is to ensure people can be better people. In that sense, Masonry, female Masonry, is very concerned with climate change, and every year have a themed axis, and this year the themed axis will be climate change, and the ethic and commitment, responsibility of Masons that we have this scope. So we will prepare with this topic in order to move forward to society and educate in the way, in the sense that women have a fundamental role in the families, in our environment, in our works. So I think that improving in a way education so that every one of the people can help climate change um, to be to stagnate in a way, or at least decrease its intensity. I believe that masonry, female masonry, in a way, can definitely help in this sense.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Adriana, for your answer. We have an open question for all panel members. How can we relate the challenges for um, sustainable growth, and such as overcoming poverty, with the impact of climate change that has gone deeper? So this is open for whoever wants to answer this question. Well, it's a reality that we are observing, and some of the news and the large deterioration that we are seeing due to the objective changes due to the climate in many areas around the world. And these processes would seem to be increasing and being accepted from situations such as the ones we are living with the pandemic, that are a consequence and have a root in this, and what it means, these changes for our inhabitants in different animals that live in forests that are still part of colonies, animal colonies that start living among people and amongst human beings, and of course produces transmission of viruses or other realities. And this is not only about the climate effect itself, the penetration of human civilization in spaces that used to be from a natural reality in a context that, of course, didn't alter natural life. And as you have seen, maybe on TV, the TV series on Netflix, where it's shown, tracks were shown, starts to show up and kills over some animals in the Arctic, moose, etc., reindeers. This is going to produce different effects, without a doubt, on the environment, and the environment is going to be altered, and this will prevent natural conditions of food production and of access to resources will be altered. And therefore, this brings objective consequences on communities and on really large populations. Loss of water, possibility of having grasslands for animals, not only for food production, but for animals that live there, etc. There is a great unbalance, and that affects, of course, the human communities and unfortunately the poorer communities. So this is not only about preventing the situation of a temperature increase on a worldwide level, and it's also a consequence of this from the point of view of the way climate is behaving, but also the way its resources can be generated to satisfy needs. Thus, to solve this with technology, with adequate policies, and with behaviors, with consumption behaviors. And this is a very important factor. We are all consumers. We all require satisfactions of needs that have to do with clothing, food, with with goods that ensure a comfort situation for people. Everything we are consuming means that things have to come from somewhere. The resources for this need to come from somewhere. Food production needs to come from somewhere. Degradation of surfaces cultivated on a worldwide level for populations has had a very important deterioration, not only because the changes in the soil use, but sometimes the urban growth, most possibility of being able to produce effectively in this land. The land becomes part of the city, but there's also a deterioration due to climate, inundations, floods. It's just an important deterioration in many parts of the world due um, to how we're losing the layer used for production, for agricultural production. So we have a set of problems that indicates that if we maintain these conditions, we'll have more poverty, we'll have more disease, we'll have more pandemics, more difficulties. Thus, everything we do needs to, as a society, as a country, and as consumers, needs to help precisely that we do not exhaust the ecosystem in such a way due to needs that sometimes become impossible to fulfill. And this is what's our challenge here. Well, first of all, stop the factors that are producing climate change. Emissions, emissions to the atmosphere, of course, for producing a greenhouse effect that's producing a brutal change in our in our climate system. If we are capable of guaranteeing this here, we also need to think about the need to generate a better use of resources and to regulate our consumption capacity. Our consumption capacity is determined for what could happen to mankind during the next few years. If we spend less energy, if we clean the production of energy, we will have to spend less energy, and our consumption, regulation of consumption, food consumption is also a factor that's hugely transcendent for all the effects of producing, sometimes with high exhaustion conditions, in order to satisfy its needs in the market. About over 2 months ago, that mankind exhausted what rationally needed to consume during the whole year. So everything we're consuming today as mankind together is overconsumption. Thus, this always has consequences. There are people that don't have access nowadays, don't have access to food, don't have access to water, in the balanced conditions required to have an adequate life in basic sense. Therefore, the great challenge to change this needs to deal with right policies in countries, right production, and right consumption habits as well. Because the more we consume, the more corporations, industries, and need to produce in order to satisfy our needs. So regulation, in the sense, in the cultural sense, is very important, and the regulation of our conditions as consumers. Thank you. Thank you, Grandmaster, for these words. With this last comment, we will close today and the first day of the Climate Week 2020. And during the whole week, from today until Saturday, December 12th, and every day at 10 a.m., we will be here online with a new discussion for the Climate Week. Today was a very robust beginning of the week. We had the participation of Grandmaster of the Grand Lodge of Chile, Minister of Energy of Chile as well, Mr. Jose Ortiz-Arena of the 6th area of the International Masonic Confederation, Janina, the Grand Mistress of the Female Lodge of Chile, Dr. Virol of the International Agency of Energy, and we want to thank the audience. We want to thank the interesting questions that you asked for our panelists. And as I was saying, we will meet again. You're invited tomorrow to participate from 10 a.m. on Zoom. We shared with you the link on the YouTube channel of the Great Lodge of Chile. I bid you farewell. My name is Rodrigo Andrade. We'll wait for you tomorrow. With you a great hug, and please be careful. Take care of yourself. Thank you very much.
La Gran Logia de Chile es una institución laica, integrada por personas de espíritu libre. Su estructura fundamental se basa en un sistema educativo, tradicional y simbólico, realizado a través de un proceso de perfeccionamiento personal. Exalta la virtud y dignidad del ser humano, promoviendo la solidaridad y la justicia social, y establece puentes para enlazar el pensar, el decir, el sentir y el actuar en beneficio de la humanidad.